Hi, and welcome to another video by Get It Done Home Repairs. Today's project, we're going to be installing tile on this backsplash. Now you see the kitchen project mostly is all done, and the finishing part is we're going to install the tiles on the backsplash. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we laid out our tiles on the top of the countertop in anticipation of putting the tiles in. We next took our corner bead and we put it into the corner. We have a rough cut on it, but we're going to take it outside and we're going to cut it down so it's slightly above where the cabinets end off. And we're going to use a hacksaw to cut that, and we're going to cut it extremely slow so we don't damage it. We're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Put our corner bead in there. We're going to mark it up on top where we're going to cut it. Remember, slightly above where the cabinet ends. We're going to cut it up there, and then we'll get in here and we'll put these tiles on. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this cover off of the outlet itself, and we're going to remove the outlet cover. We may also remove the outlet itself to get the tiles behind it. Fairly simple. You just grab a regular screwdriver and you take it out, and the outlet below, we're just basically going to grab a Phillips head type screwdriver, and we're going to pull that out. Now these are the tools we're going to need. We have a trowel, and it's a 1/16 inch V trowel that we're going to use on these tiles. We have a screwdriver. We have our pencils to mark everything down, and of course we have our spacers to create the space where the tile is going to sit on top of the countertop, because tile cannot sit on the countertop directly on top of it. It needs to have a silicone seal between the tile and the countertop. And this was the mastic that we're going to use to put the tiles onto the wall. All right, so we laid them out. We decided how we're going to set up our first course, and now we're going to get in there. We're going to grab our level, and we'll see how we're going to get started. Okay, so now we laid out our first row of tile, how it's going to be. We put our shims underneath the bottom to give it that little space between the countertop and the tile, because as I told you, you need to have silicone down there. It cannot come directly in contact with the tile and the countertop itself. I'm using a wedge type thing, but they have multiple kinds of spacers that you can use to create the space. We decided that we're going to have our cut piece down in this one corner over here. So we took our marker, we marked exactly where we're going to make our cut. We're going to take this outside and we're going to cut this on our wet saw before we put the first course on. All right. We also took our level with the tiles when we had them in place. We put our level on top of it just to make sure that the tiles are perfectly level. And if, in your case, if it's not level, then of course you can adjust the shims underneath the bottom to make it perfectly level. All right, let's go outside and make that cut. Okay, so now we're outside and we're ready to make our first cut. We have our mark on the tile itself. We set it up into the guide so that we get a nice clean cut. We're going to close our cover down because, as you know, a wet saw, it does throw a lot of water off, so you want to make sure you have your cover down. We're going to move this tile through here very slowly. You don't want to force it too quick and crack the tile, so we're going to move it through there very slowly. Right, watch your hands and be very careful, and make sure you're wearing eye protection. I didn't show you, but I am wearing eye protection myself. All right, we'll cut it through nice and slowly so we don't chip the end of the tile. And once it's cut through, we'll turn our saw off, of course, and then we'll take it over and we're going to grab our stone and we're going to smooth off that tile on the cut end so it's a nice clean surface, and we don't have to worry about it being a little bit jagged or anything. Now these stones, you buy them, you want to get them in a big box store, or you can even buy them online. You can check my Amazon store below this video and you'll find everything that you need to do this job here. Now when you're using this stone, you can't use it dry. You have to make sure that the stone itself is wet. So in my case, I dip it in a bucket of water so it's nice and wet. Put it up on the surface here, grab our cut tile, and just move it back and forth in there. It'll smooth off the tile, so it'll be a nice, clean, straight line, and it won't have anything like a little edge, a little burr, or anything like that sticking out. All right, so once we have it clean, we're going to wipe it all off, and that's it. We're ready to go inside and install it on the wall. So let's do that. All right, so we laid everything out exactly as it's going to go onto the wall. We also took that piece that we cut and we put the cut end into the channel itself. It's not touching up against the other tile. The cut ends are always into the channel itself and not touching against the tile that is coming in contact with. Now here we have a 1/16 inch V trowel that we're using to spread the mastic. All right, so let's get started with that now and put the first row up. Now when you're working with the mastic that you're going to put onto the wall, you don't want to cover the entire wall with mastic. You want to do only a small section at a time, whatever you're going to be working with. If you're not too confident in putting it on, you probably want to work with one row at a time. All right, so we reach in our bucket, we take out some mastic, we're going to put it onto the wall, and then we're going to use our V-notch trowel to actually make the grooves that we need to have in there. What you want to do is you want to put the grooves on the wall, and then you want to put some of the mastic on the tile itself, and then put grooves in the opposite direction on the tile. But I'll show you that in just a minute. Okay, once we have the mastic on the wall, we're going to take our trowel and we're going to put our trowel grooves in there. We're going to hold it at approximately a 45-degree angle so that we can actually create the grooves into the mastic that we just applied to the wall. We're going to now go on to the installing the channel on the left side here. We're going to take some of the mastic and we're just going to run a bead of mastic from the countertop up to where the cabinet itself sits. So this way we can stick the channel onto the wall and it'll stay by itself because of course the mastic is going to hold it there. So we're just going to put a slight bead of this and then we'll put the channel in place. Next we grab our channel and we come up and we take it and we stick it into the mastic that we just put on there, and you just basically just push it on there and stick it into the adhesive and it will hold and dry by itself. I usually take a small spackling tool and clean away any excess that sticks out through the side of it just so it doesn't dry and interfere with the work that I'm going to do in a short time. Now once that corner is in place, it's time to take our tiles and to put some adhesive on the back of the tile itself. Now when you put the adhesive on, if you have the grooves on the wall going in one direction, you want to have the grooves on the tile go in the opposite direction, so that way the adhesive on the wall and the adhesive on the back of the tile touch each other and it creates a nice even bond throughout the entire back of the tiling itself, and not just an air pocket someplace underneath there that's not going to hold properly. All right, so we put the adhesive on, we grab our 1/16 inch trowel, we hold it at approximately a 45-degree angle, and we take off any of the excess that's on the back like this. Nice and easy. It cleans it right off. And now when you take the tile and you put it on the wall, you put it on, of course, stick it on there. You have your spacers below. And as you put the tile on the wall, you move it in a circular type motion so that way the two lines that you put on there with the adhesive, that they actually smooth out and it creates a nice flat surface that the tile is then evenly stuck to the wall itself. All right, and that's what we do. We just move it around and that tile will be stuck. So now after we have that first tile on there, we're going to clean off the mastic or the adhesive that's on the wall itself. We're going to clean that all off, and then we're going to continue on that first row along the bottom into that one corner. This way the mastic doesn't dry while you're working on that first row. As you can see, our spaces are underneath there, created that nice even line from the tile to the countertop itself. Now we're going to continue to spread the mastic on the wall itself. We'll create the lines. Remember, we're going up or down, and then on the tile itself, we're going left to right. All right, so let's do that. Let's get that row in there and get the next one set. Now what I normally do is where the tiles are going to touch up against each other, it's a very tight fit because I'm touching one into the other and there's not going to be any kind of a spacer in there. So I clean any of the adhesive off in between the two tiles so that way it doesn't push out, causing a problem later on when you try to put the grout into the joints itself. Now you saw when I put the tile in there, I moved it around like a circular type motion so that way the wall and the tile itself sticks really well. All right, and once we have that all set, again, we have our spacers underneath the bottom. We're going to grab our trowel and we're going to clean off any of the excess adhesive that you see up on top of the tile there. We're going to take all of that off so that way it doesn't partially dry and create a problem for us when we install the next row of tile on there. All right, now we'll get our next row on. We put some of the mastic on the wall again. We grab our trowel, a 1/8 inch notch trowel, or 1/16 inch trowel, and we're gonna create the lines in it. We'll grab our next tile. We'll do the exact same thing on the back of the tile itself, and we'll put it in there again with that circular type motion so that way the adhesive bonds really well. Spacers underneath the bottom, clean off the excess, and we'll move on to the next one. Now on the one side here, on the right side, we are going to put that metal piece inside there, the edging. So we're going to put the next tile in and then we're going to apply the edging into the corner right there. We took it out to the garage and we cut it with a hacksaw to the proper length. And now we're going to put the mastic on the wall itself. We'll put that channel in place. And then once we have the channel in place, we'll come back and install the tile down below with that cut tile that we previously cut on the wet saw outside. Next, we'll stick that channel into the mastic that we put on there, push it in so that it adheres to it really well. We'll grab our trowel later on and clean off any of that excess that's up near the top of it. And that's it. We're ready to install the next two tiles. All right, next we're going to put the adhesive on the back of the next tile. We're going to create the lines in it with that trowel that we have. When we put it on the wall again, we'll make sure you move in that circular motion so that actually everything sticks really well together. Make sure you have your spacers underneath the bottom because the spacers are what's going to create that nice straight even line. We next took our tile that we're going to put into it, hold it up to make sure it fits okay. And remember, the cut end goes into the metal itself, and the clean end that was never cut butts up against the tile that was on the wall itself. All right, we are going to back butter that tile that we're going to put in there, but first we're going to clean off the adhesive on the wall so that it doesn't dry and create a problem later on when we install the next row. All right, let's take our tile, let's back butter it, and then we'll put that lines in it with that trowel, and then we'll install it on the wall. Okay, we'll grab our spacer now. We'll put it underneath the last row that we're going to put on. We put our tile in place. Remember, you want to move it around in a circular type motion because you want that adhesive to marry so that they stick together really well. And once you're confident everything is good, we have our spacers underneath the bottom. We're going to clean off a little bit of the mastic that you can see came out through the very bottom on the countertop itself. You don't want to leave it in there because when you put the silicone on, it's going to create a problem with putting the silicone on. So you want to make sure you clean it up while it's still wet. So we have it all cleaned up, and now we're ready to start on the second row. Now, in anticipation of putting in our next tiles, we're going to need to remove that outlet because we want to have the tile go underneath the outlet itself. So we're not going to remove the outlet. We're just going to take the screws out, take the outlet, pull it out just a little bit so we can get behind it with the rows of tiles that we're going to install. If you're not comfortable working with this, power being on, you'll want to shut the circuit breaker off. In this case, I'm going to work with it live because I'm not really taking it totally out. It's just going to be pulled out partially. All right, so we'll take this out, then we'll grab our tiles. We'll mark exactly as we're going to cut them, take them outside to the wet saw, and then we'll cut the opening out to fit around that outlet itself. All right, so you can see we cut it out here. Now we're going to cut out the other side just to accommodate the next tile that's going to go into it. All right, we'll grab our next tile, hold it up there to where it's going to be. We'll grab our marker and we'll mark exactly where we need to make our cut. It's a very small cut, but we're going to cut out here and to go around the outlet box itself. Then we'll take it outside and we'll make that cut, and then we'll come in and put it back together. That's just how we're going to do it. Just cut that slight corner off right there. Okay, so now after we have the tiles on and we're ready to reattach our outlet onto it, you're going to find that your screws that came with your outlet are not long enough to reach into the box in the back and go through the outlet and hold it in place. So what you do is you go to your big box store and you pick up a set of screws like this. They're actually 632. These are 2-inch, which is a little bit longer than I needed. I only needed 1.5 inches, but they didn't have it. So we're going to have to cut it down to the size that we need. Now on your pliers that you actually use to strip wires, there's a space on there where you can screw in the 632 and cut the bolt to the screw to the length that you need. So we're going to cut down probably about a 1/2 inch off of it, and then we'll install the outlet back onto the wall itself. But we're not going to tighten it on tight because the adhesive is still wet behind this. We're just going to catch it on there loosely, and then tomorrow we'll come back once the adhesive is dry, and then we'll screw the screw all the way on to make it nice and tight. But this is what the finished product is going to look like. The next thing we have to do tomorrow is to come back and screw the outlet on, as I said, and then put our grout in the joints itself. All right, our spaces are underneath there. We can leave them in there, and then we can pull them out tomorrow right before we're ready to grout anything on here, because the adhesive will be dry at that point. All right, so we'll be back tomorrow and we'll finish this off. So we're outside now. We're going to mix the grout. As you can see, we're using a throwaway because this way here we don't have to clean it out. We can just throw it away. We're going to put some of the grout inside here, and then we're going to add water to it, and we're going to mix it until it's a peanut butter type consistency. Now this is the grout that I'm using right here. This is actually meant for a gap that's up to 1/8 of an inch. So this one here is what they call non-sanded. grout, and the reason it's not, they call it non-sanded, is that there's no sand added to it. The only thing that's in here is just the cement itself. If you have a larger gap than 1/8 of an inch, then you need to use sanded grout. Okay, so now we're going to take a little bit of this and we're going to throw it into here, and then we're going to add some water to it. It's a little bit dusty, so if you're doing this in your house, be careful, of course. And you only want to mix up enough that you have to work with for, you know, whatever period of time, short period of time. You don't want to mix it up for the entire project, so just mix small batches at a time. All right, so we have it like that. Now we're just going to add a little bit of water to it. As I said, you want to have it like a peanut butter type consistency. And then we just continue to mix it. Now once you have it mixed, you want to let it sit for a couple of minutes just so everything blends together properly. You can always add more water as needed. Now this is a little bit loose, as you can see, it's a little bit too thin. So we're going to add just a little bit more of the grout to it until we get the consistency that we need. As I said, a peanut butter type consistency, and as you can see, it's nice and thick the way we want it. All right, so we're going to let it sit for a couple of minutes, and then we're going to go inside and we're going to put the grout on it and finish this project up. Okay, so now we're ready to put the grout on the wall. We have a bucket of clean water. We have a couple of sponges that we're going to use. We put them in the water. Now there's different ways of applying the grout to the wall itself. One, you can use a float such as this and cover a large section. I find this is a little difficult to do on such a small little area here. So instead of using this type of float, what I use is I use a small rubber sanding block. It's, as I said, made of rubber, and it's a lot easier to get into the tight areas and get the grout into the joints the way you want it. Now when you put the grout on there, we're going to put it on, we're going to push it into the joints itself. Don't just skim across it, push it in so that it actually fills in that entire joint right here and all along here. All right, so just push it in with the end of the rubber applicator, and then we'll clean it off with the sponge before it dries. All right, so now we're going to do a small section. We're going to do probably a foot and a half, maybe 2 feet. You don't want it to dry before you have an opportunity to wipe it off. So what I normally do is I take my spatula such as this and I rub it up against and I'll take it and I'll take some of the grout like this and just push it in to the joints just like that. Now I hear this frequently from people, oh, aren't you worried about scratching the tile? Believe me, you're not going to scratch the tile by using an applicator that's made of metal. It's just not going to happen because these tiles are glazed. They're not going to scratch the tile. All right, so we're just going to continue to push it into the joints just like that, so that it seals everything off. Once we have some grout on the wall itself, we take our rubber applicator and we take it, and remember what I told you, you're going to push the grout into the joint because you want to make sure you fill up the entire joint from the wall all the way out to the edge of the tile itself. And we're just going to continue to do that all along the way. And remember, we're only going to work with a small section at a time because we don't want the grout that's on the tile to dry so we can't get it off. All right, so we're going to do like a 2-foot section, and then we'll come back and clean it off with a bucket of water. I'm just rubbing off the excess grout that's on the outside of the tile. It'll be easier to clean up if we take the big mess off before we get in here with a bucket of water and a sponge. Okay, next we're going to come in here and we're going to clean off some of this cement before it dries on too hard right now. So we're going to grab our damp sponge and we'll just rub it like that just to clean it off. Okay, so we cleaned off the tiles really well. We cleaned off all the grout that was on there. We have everything nice and clean. We're going to come in here with a dry cloth and we're going to buff the haze on the tile so that way it'll be nice and clean. And then, of course, we're going to reattach our outlet and put our outlet cover on, and then this wall will be finished. Well, as I said, we're going to come back when it's thoroughly dry and we're going to put the silicone on the bottom here, but we'll finish that off as soon as it dries over. Okay, so now after the grout has dried thoroughly, we're going to come in here and we're going to put a thin bead of silicone right down where the granite countertop meets the backsplash. We're going to put a bead of silicone inside here, but when you put a bead of silicone in, you want to be really careful. You want to take some painter's tape and put some painter's tape down on the countertop itself and also on the back tile that you just put on, because you don't want to have a real crooked line down here or a meandering type silicone on there. You want to put the tape on there so that way it's nice and straight. All right, so we just have our silicone. We have our sealant that's going to go down on side here. There is a special sealant that you need to use on this, just so you know. We cut the tip of it at probably about a 45-degree angle right here, at a very thin angle. And now we're going to come in here with our rag and our tape, and we're going to put the tape down and get started. Now what I normally do is, instead of running a whole big long piece of tape, I usually take a piece like this, smaller, and come in here and put it on the countertop itself and make it so it's about 1/4 of an inch, between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch of space for the grout, for the silicone to go in. All right, so we're going to put that down here just like this. We're going to make it as straight as we possibly can, of course. And we're going to do that on the entire countertop itself. Okay, so we have it now. We have it on the bottom. We're going to do the exact same thing up against the tile itself, just about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so we have about 1/4 of an inch on the tile itself and 1/4 of an inch on the countertop. And now we'll take our silicone and we're going to move slowly and we're going to squeeze it in so that the actual silicone goes underneath the tile, right up inside that area right there. All right, so let's do that. As you're moving your silicone gun, if you have a manual tube, then you want to make sure you have sufficient pressure to get a nice even bead of silicone coming out. I'm going to start from the opposite corner now. Don't worry if it's a little bit bumpy. We're going to smooth that out in just a moment. Okay, so now we have our silicone spread. We're going to grab another rag and we're going to get a little bit of water. We're going to wet our finger and then we're going to clean that up. So let me do that. Okay, so we dip our finger in some water. We come in here with our finger and we just run it across just like that. Now it doesn't really matter where that silicone goes on the tape, you see it? Because we're going to be removing that tape. Just like that. So you see how the silicone is spread out now onto the tape? But when we remove the tape, we'll have a nice straight line of silicone. All right, now very important, before this silicone dries in here, you have to remove that tape. Now when you take the top tape off, you want to have a slight upward movement on it so that way the paint line is a nice, clean, crisp line of silicone. Versus the same thing on the bottom, we're going to keep it a nice crisp line and pull it away from the granite countertop. All right, so let me get in there, let's get that done, and we'll wrap this job up. Okay, so we're just going to take the tape and pull it up a little bit like that. And now we have a nice clean line. Be careful because the silicone on the tape is, of course, still wet. Okay, so if we have this one off now, we'll take the other one off. Okay, let's throw this away. We're going to let that dry a little bit, and then we'll be 100% done. Let me bring you in there and I'll show you what it looks like close up. Okay, and that's what it looks like where the granite and the tile meet. And you can see it's a nice clean line down there. As I said, we're just going to let this dry for a few hours and then it'll be 100% finished. All right, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.